good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ambria Calloway, and I am one of the program managers here at X9. And if you didn't hear me give my quick introduction earlier, again, we just want to welcome everyone and thank you for attending our webinar on the NIST Quantum Cryptography Standards. This webinar will be presented by Dustin Moody, and we will turn things over to him in just a moment to get things started. But first, we have a few quick housekeeping items to go over. If you haven't noticed already, all participants have been placed on global mute. You will not have the ability to unmute yourself. But if you have any questions during the presentation, you please submit them via the chat. In case you don't see the chat box at the moment, it's typically in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen or in the meeting panel options at the top of your screen. You can place any questions that you have during the presentation into the chat. You can also enter questions into the chat during the Q&A session. And if you do have a question that you want to elaborate a little further on and would like to be unmuted, we ask that you use the raise your hand feature, which you can find beside your name in the participant list. This webinar will be recorded, and meeting materials will also be made available to all registrants at the end of the webinar. We typically have the recording and meeting materials in about 24 hours, but either way, just be on the lookout for an email from X9 with those meeting materials. You will also be able to find the recording and meeting materials on our website at x9.org. And without further ado, I will turn everything over to Steve Stevens, our Executive Director, so that he can give a brief introduction.
Thanks, Ambria. I want to welcome Dr. Dustin Moody today. For those, I'm sure most everybody on the call probably knows Dustin. He's worked with X9, and this is a member of X9. He's worked with us for years. He is a wealth of knowledge and always keeps us up to date with the latest and greatest, and especially in the post-quantum cryptography area. For those that don't know, X9 does have a quantum computing risk study group if anybody's in. And all of our crypto standards probably have as some foundational element a NIST standard. And this will be no difference for the post-quantum. I know our groups are kind of chomping at the bit, waiting for the official notifications that the algorithms have been selected. And Dustin will go over where NIST is at the moment and what to expect in the coming days. Without any further delay, I'll turn it over to Dustin. And again, Dustin, thank you so much for all your help that you provided in the past for X9.
Well, thanks for that introduction, Ambria and Steve. I'm happy to be here talking with you about the post-quantum cryptography standards that we've been working on. So like Steve just said, if you're using cryptography anywhere in any kind of device, most likely you're using some cryptography that's been standardized by NIST. NIST has been doing this for a long time, going all the way back to an algorithm called DES in the 1970s that some of you may be familiar with. And over the years, we've had to evolve and adapt to new cryptographic challenges. One of these challenges, of course, is a threat from a quantum computer. I'm not going to get into kind of exactly what a quantum computer is, but it's basically a new type of computer that has been actively worked on for a while now. There's companies like IBM and Google and presumably governments around the world that are all trying to build a larger and larger quantum computer. A quantum computer would operate on kind of different principles of physics than we're used to. It uses some counterintuitive properties of quantum physics to give us some potentially groundbreaking computational power that we simply can't match with classical computers. These quantum computers, they won't be universal in that they're going to do absolutely everything that our current computing technology can do, but there's going to be some problems for which they are very good and will give us a huge speed up in efficiency to tackle things that we've never been able to do. Now, a lot of these are very positive to society. We're going to be able to, do better logistical modeling or design new drugs or all sorts of great things for science that will advance, benefits for all of us. But today I'm going to talk about probably the only negative consequence of quantum computers, and that if we have a large enough quantum computer, it's well known that there is a threat to some of the crypto systems that we use today, because there's an algorithm called Shor's algorithm that once you get the quantum computer big enough, it will be able to break some of the crypto systems that we use today. So specifically, at NIST, we have a couple different types of cryptographic standards. There's a chart you can see on the screen there. We have what are called public key algorithms. We have what are called symmetric key crypto algorithms. And then we've got some other guidance and documents with things like random number generation and key management and so on and so forth. The biggest impact that we will see from a quantum computer is to the public key cryptography, the crypto systems that we use there. At NIST, we have 3 such public key cryptography standards. These standards are for public key encryption, public key key establishment, as well as digital signatures. And Shor's algorithm would completely break all of these crypto systems in these standards that we use today. These include algorithms like Diffie-Hellman, the elliptic curve Diffie-Hellman, RSA, DSA, ECDSA, would all be vulnerable to attacks from a large enough quantum computer. And we can't simply just scale up the key sizes. The attack is so efficient that scaling up the key sizes, you'd have to go so big that it would be a very impractical system. What we're going to need to do is replace these crypto systems with something else. Now, this is it's a very big effect. We use these crypto systems all the time, but it's important to point out as well that they are not all the crypto systems which we use today. Our major class is what's called symmetric key cryptography, and this includes hash functions like SHA-2 and SHA-3, and block cipher like AES. Now there's another quantum algorithm called Grover's algorithm that would impact the symmetric key crypto algorithms, but not as dramatic. We would need to use a longer output for the hash functions, use a longer key for the block ciphers, but that's more manageable. We don't have to completely replace the algorithm. Instead of, for example, AES 128, we could use AES 256 and have protection from this attack. So our focus at NIST has been on the public key cryptography standards, because we're going to have to replace those algorithms and it will take more time to do that. Now, how soon do we need to worry about this? What's the status of quantum computers today? The answer is we do have examples of quantum computers in the world, but they're still relatively small scale. They're starting to do some interesting things, but they're nowhere near the level that of size that is needed in terms of the number of qubits and the error correction of these quantum computers, that they're threatening cryptographic level security. So that's good, because we wouldn't want our crypto systems broken right now before we have solutions in place. But we might think, okay, well, we can just wait on this. We don't need to worry about this problem for a while. And that's not exactly true either, for a couple of reasons. Number one, it takes time to come up with a new solution, and then to get it standardized, and then to get it into products, and then to get those products adopted around the world. And we need to have that all in place years before a quantum computer comes out. So we need to do all this work in advance, and we know that this work takes time. A second reason is that you can actually be at risk to a quantum computer even though the quantum computer has not yet been built. This is a threat that's become known as harvest now, decrypt later. And the idea is that you have an adversary or an attacker that's able to get access to your data. Now it's encrypted, your data, so they can't read it, but they can simply hold on to that data until the quantum computer comes out, and then they could potentially get access to your data. Now, if your data needs to be protected for a long time, maybe it's national security secrets that need to be protected for 30 years. Well, if a quantum computer comes out in 15 years, you're already 15 years too late because you needed to have encrypted it 15 years ago with quantum resistant algorithms. So that harvest now, decrypt later threat just helps us understand as well that we need to get this all done a lot sooner than we might originally think. Now, the United States, the federal government has been taking some actions in the past year or two to make sure that the federal government and other organizations will be prepared for this threat. And I'm going to talk about what NIST has been doing, but I just wanted to point out over the past year or two, we have had some national security memos come out from the White House. We had just last November this memo from the Office of Management and Budget that kind of gave concrete steps that agencies were being told, here's the things that you need to start doing. Congress also got in on the act. They passed a law, the Quantum Cybersecurity Preparedness Act, something like that, that kind of codified into law what these national security memos had been saying. And the National Security Agency also updated and had an announcement about their new commercial national security algorithm suite that is taking count the quantum threat. So we see the federal government is starting to take action, starting to provide guidance. The overall goal I have written down in the bottom left here is that the United States is hoping to transition their high priority systems as much as possible by 2035 to quantum resistant cryptography. That's a very ambitious goal. I think it's not likely that every crypto system that's in use will be completely transitioned over, but it's important to set a goal somewhere and work hard towards that goal. And that's the date that was put down. And again, I'm going to talk more about what NIST is doing in terms of standardization, but I just thought it would be good here to kind of highlight. This is what the memo from the Office of Management and Budget gave us some concrete steps to kind of illustrate, even though we don't have the standards out fully done yet, this is what agencies have been asked to start working on. So things like prioritizing your inventory of cryptographic systems, to check where you're using cryptography, what type of cryptography are you using. You need to figure out how much money, how much resources this is going to take to work on this. You need to start coordinating a lead for your plan. You can start testing the algorithms that I'm going to talk about, and look for guidance from NIST and other places so that you can start preparing. So I'll come back to this a little bit and talk about things that you can be doing to prepare, but just wanted to kind of start out with that these are, even though a quantum computer is in the future, these are things that we need to start taking action on today. And I'm using kind of things from the government to show that the government's taking this very seriously. Also to show a little bit what the National Security Agency is kind of putting out in regards to this. They have their own documents and a whole website and an FAQ devoted to this, but they've got a timeline up for when they want national security systems to transition. On the right, there's a chart showing which algorithms are approved to provide protection for national security systems. To a large degree, they're still using AES for block ciphers. That hasn't changed. The other algorithms are all quantum resistant algorithms that we have standardized or are standardizing at NIST, and I'll be talking about these algorithms. So again, their goal, they're aligning with the memo to be transitioning by 2035. So now I'm going to talk what NIST has been doing. You're probably or maybe familiar with, back in 2016, we kicked off our standardization effort by basically starting an international competition to select new crypto systems for our standards. NIST has done this kind of thing in the past. We did it to select SHA-3 as a hash function most recently. Before that, the block cipher A was selected in this manner. Specifically, we were looking for digital signatures and public key encryption or key establishment, because those are the ones that are broken by a quantum computer. And what NIST would be doing is we would be managing this open, transparent, and timely process where designers and researchers around the world would develop new algorithms. They would send them in to us at NIST. We would make them public, code and everything, the specifications on our website, and let the cryptographic community evaluate them. NIST would be evaluating them as well. The end goal being that we would find the strongest algorithms and that we would standardize them at the conclusion of the process. We knew that there would be not just one algorithm, that we would select a small number for diversity of security reasons, as well as for different performance profiles. So this was announced back in 2016 and has been ongoing since that time. The criteria that we were using to evaluate these crypto systems, first, it needs to be secure against both classical and quantum attacks. We defined 5 security categories relating it to existing NIST standardized algorithms. We expect categories or levels 1, 2, and 3 should be enough for the next several decades, but we went all the way up to category 5. For example, the NSA is saying that you'll need to use category 5 for national security systems. Besides security, performance was the next selection criteria. That would be measured in a variety of ways, looking at the key sizes, the signature sizes, the efficiency in terms of clock cycles in a variety of different platforms, hardware and software. And then there's a number of other properties that it would be useful to have as well, but security and performance were kind of the big two. Now, over the past 6 years, we had a number of rounds of evaluation. Initially, we had 69 different algorithms that were involved in the process. The tables on the right show that they came from different mathematical families. There was some lattice-based algorithms, code-based algorithms, and so on and so forth. It was a very international effort. During these rounds, all the algorithms were evaluated. Sometimes algorithms were broken. There was a lot of conferences being held, a lot of research being done, performance testing, a lot of benchmarking, real-world experimentation, putting these algorithms in practice. But basically, we had a first round, and then we selected 26 algorithms to move on into a second round. That second round lasted a year and a half, at which point we picked 7 finalists and 8 alternates to study in the third round. And then after about 2 years of study, we selected the algorithms that we would be standardizing out of that third round there. Along the way, we wrote reports on all this. So if you're interested in kind of more of the details or how or why we selected what we did, you can look up these reports on the process. To jump straight to the results, at the end of the third round, we selected 4 algorithms for standardization. We selected an algorithm called Crystal's Kyber for public key encryption, or equivalently key establishment. And we selected 3 algorithms for digital signatures. This includes Crystal's Dilithium, Falcon, and Sphinx Plus. So that was the big part of the announcement, where these are the first algorithms standardized. We did also select a few algorithms to continue to study. If you'll notice, Kyber is in what's called the chem category, and there was only one of those, but we had 3 signatures. So we had 4 algorithms that are still being evaluated for chems, and we anticipate to select 1 or 2 of them so that we'll have more than one. And we also announced that we would be doing a smaller future work in calling for more signatures, and I'll explain why in a little bit. But that was all part of our kind of end of the third round announcements. So to just talk a little bit about the 4 algorithms we selected. Crystal's Kyber is based on lattices. It's a very good all-around performance and security. Public key cryptography is typically used in terms of encryption, mainly for key establishment. You'll establish a shared key, and then you'll switch over to AES and use symmetric key encryption. So we think Crystal's Kyber will fit perfectly for that application scenario, and it will be very, very good. The 3 algorithms were all signature algorithms. Dilithium was also based on lattices. It was designed by a lot of the same team as Kyber. Again, it had good all-around performance and security. We recommend that it be the primary signature algorithm used. So Kyber and Dilithium are probably going to be the two main algorithms that people end up using. We did also select Falcon, which is another lattice-based signature algorithm. The reason we selected Falcon is it has small keys and smaller signature sizes. Some applications, they really need the smaller signatures and key sizes, and they will need to use Falcon. Dilithium might just be a little bit too big to fit. However, Falcon has a very complex implementation using floating point arithmetic that a lot of devices, it may be too complicated to securely implement. So there's some trade-offs there, but we ended up selecting both for standardization. Sphinx Plus is a non-lattice-based algorithm. It is based on stateless hash-based cryptography, and it was selected to provide diversity of security assumptions. If there were some new attack on lattices, then we have an algorithm that's not based on lattices for signatures. Now, its security is very solid, but its performance is not very good in comparison to Dilithium and Falcon. It's a lot bigger and slower. So the timeline here, this shows kind of where we've been and kind of what's going on in the future. Right now, we're in the summer of 2023. We just released draft standards for the first algorithms that we're standardizing. That includes draft standards for Kyber and for Dilithium and for Sphinx Plus. We put those out for public comment just a couple weeks ago, and public comments are due back on November 22nd. So if you haven't taken a look, certainly please provide us any feedback that you have at them. We'll be having a workshop to talk about these topics next April here in Maryland. It'll be in person. And the overall timeline is that we will publish these PQC standards, the ones that were put out for public comment, in the first half of 2024. So that is coming up in not too long, and we're excited about that. But you can also see on the timeline, jointly with standardizing these first algorithms, we still have the fourth round that we're evaluating a few algorithms. And we also have this second signature process going on that I'm going to tell you more about as well. So we have ongoing and future work as well besides, the standardization that we're doing. So as I said, the first three algorithms that we're standardizing are Kyber, Dilithium, and Sphinx Plus. They are going to be published as what we call FIPS, which are Federal Information Processing Standards. They have the numbers 203, 204, and 205. Being the government, we had to give them new names, so they have acronyms. So Kyber is MLChem, Dilithium is MLDSA, Sphinx Plus is SLHDSA. Falcon, we're starting to write, but it's going to come out several months kind of behind the others. That's mainly due to limited resources at doing all the different things we're working on. We wanted to get these first three out, and Falcon will follow shortly after. We will also publish more documents with more guidance and details. For example, Kyber is what's called a key encapsulation mechanism. It's really the first one of those that we've standardized, so we will have a document that describes more about the kind of some of the assumptions and the things that you need to know to safely use a chem in protocols. So with standardization, we had to select specific parameter sets and say which security levels that they're meeting. We had to choose which primitives and hash functions are going to be involved. So, are we using SHA-2 or SHA-3 or KCHAC? We had to make those very concrete. And if you look in the draft FIPS, you will see all of that details in there. And once again, we encourage people to give us feedback. The deadline for it is on November 22nd. Now, we still do have a few algorithms being evaluated in the fourth round. These include 3 code-based algorithms and an algorithm called Psych, although don't use Psych. It was broken last year. The designers acknowledged that it was broken, so it's not going to be selected for standardization. But we will select 1 or 2 of these algorithms here to complement Kyber. We don't expect it to replace Kyber, They're a little bit bigger than Kyber, so we still expect Kyber to be the main algorithm used. But as they're based on codes, they provide another option in case there were some attack on lattices. So we expect the fourth round will probably go on for roughly another year before we make that decision. Now, I've mentioned this a little bit. We have what we're calling the ONRAMP for signatures. So I mentioned we selected Sphinx Plus as kind of a backup algorithm that's not based on lattices, but that it's bigger and slower. We're hoping to find other non-lattice based signatures that are more general purpose than Sphinx Plus. So we launched an open call to get new algorithm designs for that. And that process had a deadline of June 1st, and we received a number of submissions. So we're in the first round of evaluation for this on-ramp process. We have 40 submissions that were accepted from Complete and Proper. They're based on a number of cryptographic assumptions, mathematical families like lattices and code-based and multivariate. So if you're interested more on that, you can go to our webpage and see their specifications, see the code and all of that. But that's ongoing work. The expected outcome of this is we might get one or two more signatures that we could standardize in the future. We don't anticipate that they will replace dilithium again, but just that they will complement. And if we need a non-lattice based algorithm that's more general purpose than Sphinx Plus, that we will have something available. I do want to point out that there are some quantum resistant algorithms that have been already standardized, both in the IETF and by ISO, as well as by NIST. And these are called stateful hash-based signatures. Cryptographers have known about these for a while, and we understand their security very well, which is why we were able to standardize them earlier. But the caution here is that these are not general purpose digital signature algorithms. They should only be used for specific applications like code signing and firmware updates. The reason being is that you have to manage the state in these algorithms, and if you end up signing the same message twice with the same key, then you completely lose all security. So they're very kind of fragile and have to be carefully implemented. But these standards are out there. And as part of NSA's CNSA 2.0, these stateful hash-based signatures from our standards are allowed for signing software and firmware updates right now. There are other standards organizations that are working on this. Of course, X9 is one of them. They've been doing a lot of good work. They've written some white papers and done studies, and we've collaborated and communicated with X9 so that we're both on the same page. IEEE, IETF has been doing a lot of standardization work. To a large degree, they were waiting for our NIST process to finish, and now that the algorithms are known, you know, they're working on specific standards for the different applications that they have. ETSI is a European telecommunications standards organization. We've worked with them. They've been writing recommendations and reports. ISO is beginning standardization. Right now, they're standardizing Kyber and Classic McLeese and Frodo, which all of those were algorithms that were involved in our process. NIST is working closely with all of them and encouraging this, and it's good to see that we're, you know, have strong algorithms that are being standardized. As well, there are also various countries that have begun standardization. So France and Germany and the UK have all, since our process concluded, produced reports where they've indicated what their countries will be using. So there's a lot of focus now on the transition and migration, now that we know that the standards are going to be completed next year. Some of the discussion focuses on what's called a hybrid or a composite mode, and that's the idea that you can use a post-quantum algorithm along with a currently NIST approved algorithm and combine them, and that's a way to kind of hedge your bets. You're still getting quantum security, but you're also, since these algorithms are newer and haven't been as battle tested yet, we're still using the existing implementations for current standardized algorithms. And so to break these hybrid modes, you'd have to break both crypto systems. So we've seen a lot of interest in industry, is that this is a possible way to transition until we get more experience with the new standards. NIST hasn't taken a position that you have to do that, or we're not mandating it or anything. It will depend very much on your use case, your application, and we will make sure people understand the advantages and disadvantages. Certainly it makes sense. We will provide other documents on transition guidelines, on things like timelines and legacy use and so on. We've done this before with our crypto guidance. A necessary first step is that we publish the standards though. So the timelines are going to take a little bit of time, but they will follow not too long after the first standards are published. To help as well with the migration, NIST has what's called the National Cybersecurity Center of Excellence, which is running a project to help organizations tackle challenges related to adoption. So to do this, they've partnered with a number of industry collaborators and other standards organizations, and they've been doing things like issuing guidance and holding webinars. But another very interesting thing that they've been doing is with the industry partners, they've been working in work streams to do different aspects. So they have a discovery work stream where some of our partners are able to demonstrate tools that they have that can do things like do an inventory to find which crypto systems that you're using. There's also an interoperability work stream and a performance work stream. So this is something where we like to point people to if they want more guidance on the migration, or if they want to be involved with the project more directly, they can even, they can join the project as well. But we work closely with the NCCOE on this to assist in the migration to PQC effort. So what are some things that organizations can do now? The standards are out in draft form. We don't want people to start baking those into their products yet. We want you to wait until the final versions of the standards are published, but you can certainly start doing things. You can be testing the algorithms that are in the draft FIPS. All of the guidance that I displayed earlier in that OMB memo, things like doing a cryptographic inventory, start designating who your lead are, designating money and resources, talk with your vendors, look at your supply chain. A lot of this was also summarized just a week ago. NIST, jointly with the NSA and CISA, published a fact sheet called Quantum Readiness Migration to Post-Quantum Cryptography that outlines a lot of these same kind of steps. But certainly, yeah, developing your knowledge, making sure your IT people are aware. The sooner you begin to prepare and plan for the standards to come out, the better off that you will be. And then when the standards are published, you'll be able to hit the ground running because you've done a lot of your groundwork ahead of time. So just in conclusion, before we have time for questions, we are very grateful for everybody's efforts in the research community, in industry, standards organizations, X9. We couldn't have done a lot of this work on our own. Post-quantum cryptography is a super important thing to get right. And so we're very grateful to have partnered with everyone to work on this. At the same time, it's exciting. We can see some of the light at the end of the tunnel. We're going to have the first standards here soon, but there's a lot of future work to do as well. There's a lot that we need to think about for the migration and so on. And then I just have some links for you can always go to our webpage. We set up what's called the PQC Forum. It's an online mailing list for announcements and discussion, so you can sign up for that, and then you can always just contact us directly. So with that, I'd be happy to stop now and take any questions that you have.
There's at least one question in the chat, and I think there's a couple more coming in. Dustin, can you see the chat?
To see the chat, I have to stop sharing, so I can do that. Okay, here we go. So first question asks, what does ML, SLH, and FN stand for? So those were part of the acronym names for the algorithms. So Kyber is known as MLDSA. ML stands for module lattice, and that's also for dilithium. Kyber was ML Chem, and the ML is module lattice. Dilithium is MLDSA for module lattice. Sphinx Plus was SLH, it's for stateless hash. And FN is FNDSA is part of Falcon. And that one was a little bit trickier. The F stands for Fourier and the N stands for NTRU. You have to know kind of how Falcon is designed to kind of understand that a little bit better. But again, those are the acronyms we selected. The reason being we expect people still to call them Kyber and dilithium and everything, but by giving them new names in our standard with certain parameters and security levels, people will be able to specify concretely which version you're using. Okay, next question there says, once the candidate algorithms are finalized, is NIST going to participate in standardizing PKCS standards? Yeah, NIST is working with organizations, and we will certainly partner and help with PKCS standardization as well. Another question, also the same with contributions for FIPS 143 update and TLS and other standards updates to accommodate PQC algorithm changes. So yeah, NIST isn't the main driver in a lot of these, like with TLS and the IETF. We do have people that are in some of these IETF working groups that are involved and are participating, and we also communicate with the chairs of different working groups to coordinate all this. So we are involved, definitely we are doing that. With regards to FIPS 140 and validation, we have our CMVP and CAVP. That's who does the validation and testing for us here at NIST. They have been working with us. We've given them, the copies of the standards in advance so they can be working through it as quickly as they can. Their goal is to have validation and testing done hopefully the same day the final versions of the standards are published. I'm not 100% sure if that will happen or not, but that is their goal. So that as soon as you have the standard, then you'll be able to get it tested and validated. And that's kind of as far as I can give an update on them. So then there's another question. Where could we get the reports on the algorithm selection and exclusion process, as you mentioned? So those are called, if you just Google, I had them in my slides there, like NIST 8413. I can put that in the chat here just so you have it. This is the third round report, and it's quite detailed as to what were the algorithms we were considering, what were their characteristics, why did we pick the ones we picked, why did we not pick the ones we picked. So if you Google NIST 8413, you'll be led to that. Or if you go to our webpage, it's pretty easy to find there. You can click on the right-hand side to documents, and you will find it there. There's a question, do the patent agreements cover the draft standards? So during the process, there was some a concern over some patents that potentially applied to Kyber. In order to facilitate adoption, NIST made agreements with the holders of those patents so that if you are following what is standardized in the NIST documents, then the holders of those patents agreed that there was, you have a license to do so. No payments involved or anything like that. It would be completely free. We put some of the text of that license agreement on our website so you can see that. And if you encourage anyone, if they have further questions, you can talk to our lawyers at NIST. I'm not a lawyer, so I can't give, complete legal descriptions, but in essence, the license agreements say if you follow what's in the NIST standard, then you're fine to use the algorithms. So there is a question there that says, what kind of updates expected for algorithm validation? Or is there any new set of test suite like one published for AES is expected? Yes, we'll have test vectors. They are not yet out. The draft FIPS just came out 2 weeks ago. The CMVP and CAVP are working on having test vectors, but they aren't out yet. They're hopeful that in a few months that they can, but they're at a different group, so I can't speak for them too much or control what they do too much, but they are trying to do that as quickly as possible. The question that says, will there be any export regulations be imposed on these algorithms? I don't have any real good expertise on export regulations. I have given a couple presentations down at the Department of Commerce to people who do export regulations, so they are aware of post-quantum and our standardization experts. From my understanding of the discussion, I don't think that there are going to be export regulations, but I'm not an expert. It's not my field, so I can't promise or guarantee anything there. The next question I see says, when will the NIST list of strong algorithms with bit strength be revised to cover this and drop the deprecated key sets? So yeah, that'll come out after we publish the first PQC standards. Our goal for that is in the first half of the year of 2024. I think something in the national security memos or some of that guidance from the White House says that within 180 days, or maybe it's 90 days of when the final standards are published, NIST needs to have a plan or something along those lines for when that timeline will be announced. So it's going to take a little bit of time. We're thinking about that and trying to come up with it, but it will take, I would say, a few months to maybe up to a year until that guidance comes out in terms of when will you be able to transition, what will be the dates, when will things be deprecated, when will they be legacy use, so on and so forth. Somebody asks, is it true that the quantum computers effectively reduce the symmetric algorithm security in half? So theoretically, yes, Grover's algorithm cuts the security of symmetric key algorithms in half. So if you use Grover's algorithm, you get this quadratic speed up. But in practice, that's not entirely true. There's some considerations that Grover's algorithm, you have to run all the steps in series, and that means it's not going to be as effective in practice as kind of in theory. We don't completely know how fast a quantum computer will run, how expensive it will be to operate. We have some more details on our FAQ on our website, but the upshot of what we say there says that we don't anticipate that Grover's algorithm will actually provide as much speed up as it will theoretically. So we think AES 128 will continue to be safe for another decade or two. And we don't think that you'll really need to go up to doubling the key size to go all the way up to AES 256 to get the same security. You can certainly do that, and then you're safe and secure and sure. But because of some practical considerations, we don't feel that you actually will need to do that. There's a question that says, as the Falcon key sizes are small, are there any security concerns of using Falcon where there's no limitation with key storage or performance? No, our only concern with Falcon is the complexity of the implementation. It uses floating point arithmetic and some kind of complicated Gaussian sampling. And if your implementation can handle that, then you're fine to use Falcon. More lightweight devices we think are going to have a struggle with that. So, but there's no kind of security concerns with Falcon in that regard. Somebody asks, you said the patent coverage was if you follow what is in the standard. Does that mean optimizations are probably patented? That's a question I don't have an answer for. We don't know what we don't know. The implementations that are in the specifications are already quite efficient. They're just as fast, if not faster, than like ECC and RSA. So it's possible there are some optimizations that are patented by somebody. Sure, it's possible. I don't know anything about it, but the algorithms are quite fast already, and efficiency shouldn't be too much of a concern. There's a question that says, a little off topic, but when will NIST develop a symmetric block cipher with a larger block size? 128 bits is borderline too small for a lot of modern use cases. Well, we do have AES-256, which uses a 256-bit key. For hash functions, we have SHA-3, which use permutations that are a lot larger than 128 bits. You can go 192 bits or 256 bits, and the internal permutations have a larger block size that they're working with. So we do have some that are larger. We don't, at this point, have any plans that I'm aware of to develop any larger sizes than what we currently have with regards to symmetric key cryptography. Next question. So can we rule out that there is no impact or change for the symmetric cryptography until NIST comes back in the future for these algorithm revisions as per PQC? I hope this is a safe assumption. Please share your views. Yes, I think that is correct. You know, until we provide new guidance, you can certainly stick with the guidance that is existing. We don't anticipate changing the symmetric key guidance. Like I said, with regard to AES, we expect it still is secure. AES 128 in particular is secure for a few decades. So yeah, eventually there's going to need to be some timelines for transition, but it's not going to be anytime soon or anything. So yeah, there will be little impact or change for a number of years with symmetric key cryptography. Of course, that's with existing state of knowledge. If something new comes out or changes things, that's true. Someone asks, what about Simon's algorithm for GCM? Is that also an infeasible attack? So Simon's algorithm is a quantum algorithm. Yeah, cryptographers are aware of Simon's algorithm, and when looking at lattice-based crypto systems or other ones, they take Simon's algorithm and every other known quantum algorithm into account, and they choose parameter sizes large enough that even any of these known algorithms, they're not good enough to break the levels of security that they claim. So yeah, Simon's algorithm, it is a quantum algorithm. For some crypto systems, it's the most relevant one. For many crypto systems, it's not the most relevant algorithm. Next question says, as technology is growing, whether this validation is going to recommend one of the algorithms like AES in the past or going to be a set of candidates, then narrowing down to one single algorithm or candidate in each category? Good question. So we are standardizing more than one post-quantum algorithm. That is true for both digital signatures as well as for key establishment, or what we call KEMs, key encapsulation mechanisms. Right now, we've standardized 3 signatures. We have our ONRAMP process where we will potentially standardize 1 or 2 more. In the KEM side of things, we've standardized Kyber. And with the 4th round algorithms, we will standardize an additional 1 or 2 of those. So we see that, yeah, there's going to be a small number of algorithms in each category. It's not going to be a single algorithm like AES. I hope that answered the question there. The next question says, can you dig into the real-world uses to break existing use? So can you dig into the real-world uses to break existing uses of public key cryptography? I understand what key establishment is and how breaking existing PKI exposes symmetric keys you're exchanging, but what other cases exist? I'm not quite sure I understand what you're wanting with that question. I mean, for digital signatures, we sign a lot of documents. You also, like when you download an app or you're getting a software update, that's signed with a digital signature, so you can make sure you authenticate where it came from. If someone's able to forge those signatures, it would have pretty dramatic consequences. Okay, and then question clarified on my answer to an earlier question. It says, you were talking about key sizes. I was asking about block sizes. AS is stuck at 128. Yeah, NIST, to my knowledge, I'm not aware of any plans that we have to develop another algorithm that has a larger block size at this point. So I'm not on the symmetric key team, but I do communicate with them, and I'm not aware of any plans about it. So that's probably all I can say about that. And I think I've reached the end of the questions in the chat.
Yep, it looks like those are all of the questions so far. So we'll give maybe a few seconds in case someone is typing a message.
And if I didn't answer it to your satisfaction, you could certainly, contact us. We're happy to talk more about any of these things that you'd like more information on.
I was going to ask Dustin, did your last slide have a contact information or anything at all, or?
Yeah, let me put that back up, and then.
Okay.
Oh. Yep. So you can go to our webpage. You can go to the PQC forum, and on the PQC forum, you can ask us or many other experts. There's also an email for our PQC team. If you want to email me directly, it's just dustin.moody@nist.gov. So my name @nist.gov.
Okay, perfect.
I think there's one more question in the chat.
That person was just answering a question from Phil Smith.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. So Phil, in case you didn't get a chance to look at the chat, it looks like there is a response to something that you said earlier or mentioned earlier. But that looks like that is it for the chat questions. Oh, I'm sorry, Steve, you're right. There is one more. And Dustin, it says, any comments on how, oops, I just lost it. Any comments on how quantum computers may affect the various tokenization schemes where clear text is mapped to a random value?
Not something I'm very familiar with, so I don't have any comments on it. No, sorry.
Okay. Great. All right, so I'm looking at the chat and it looks like there aren't any additional questions. But again, Dustin has so graciously provided contact information that is now displayed on the screen. We'll make sure to include that as well when we send the meeting recording and presentation materials out to the registrants or participants. Again, on behalf of X9, Dustin, we want to thank you and NIST for this great update and wonderful presentation. We also want to thank our attendees for joining. If you would like to stay tuned and get more information about X9's webinars, feel free to either shoot us an email at admin@x9.org, and we'll be sure to include you on our webinar mailing list. There's also a way to sign up for the webinar mailing list on our website at x9.org. And so, again, we want to thank everyone for joining us this afternoon, and we'll go ahead and close the webinar now. Thank you again, everybody. And thank you, Dustin.
Thanks, Dustin.
No problem.